girls who relate to these dolls as if they're human and create a social emotional environment, and the guys who throw them around, create a spatial mechanical environment. It's emotional, but it's clearly not as much as this. Well, guys don't operate as much as females generally out of that social emotional sphere, and if we have some mutations that occur, they may lose that. So what we're finding with video games and with that whole world, and I'm just saying, watch out. And in this, the rest of this session, our institute here in Phoenix, as well as later in this session through the camera, we will be talking about that. And it is a really big deal. So too much screen time can actually retard social emotional development in males, not just cognitive. But it also illustrates how visual graphic they are. They gravitate toward that. So a key for us strategically as teachers is this visual strategy, which is okay, have them draw the thing before they write it. You know, any of you can do this in any of your environments. Let's say you're teaching and you're having them write. Just tell all the students, look, if you want, for a half hour, before you write, go ahead and draw. So give them a yellow pad or a big storyboard, whatever it is. Just show them how to cut it in half here and then here. So you got 6, easy. Some would go with just 4. And then say, okay, just draw what happened over Labor Day weekend. Draw it. They draw it, right? They filled it in with, even if it's stick figures, they filled it in. It's visual graphic. Then a half hour later, they start writing the paper. They now can refer back to the drawing. So, and you can try this. Anyone can try this, and it's part of systemic change. As you try this, you find that students who were getting D's, students who were getting F's, you know, now they can draw before they write. So now they don't waste that whole hour writing 6 sentences, which is going to get them a D, right? Now, half of the hour is spent drawing, and the other half is spent writing. And the half that's spent writing, they write a lot more. And because it's in these 6 here, they have better organization. Because they're like, oh, they have a visual to help them organize it. And to whom of us does it come as a surprise that an 11-year-old boy is not as organized as an 11-year-old girl, right? So this helps with organization too. Okay, so in developing these strategies, as I develop them and as we have developed them and you and your communities have developed them, we've developed them based on looking at these brain scans and saying, oh, wow. Okay. So here are some more areas of the brain that are different, and I want to start with the cerebellum at the bottom. The cerebellum is the doing center at the bottom of the brain. It's about there. Males have a larger cerebellum and a more active cerebellum. So that fits with what I showed you before, where so much of what we do is down here going into the body and up. Another one is hippocampus. Females, girls, have a larger hippocampus memory center. Generally more active, with more tentacles out to other parts of the brain. And if you ever want to do citizen science on this, if any of you are in a coupled relationship, and let's say for this to work, heterosexual coupled relationship, my wife and I, this plays out with us all the time. If we have an argument, we've been married 31 years, so you know, we've had a lot of arguments. So if we have an argument, who remembers 70 things that fit with this argument, right? She does generally. Every once in a while I remember something, and I'm really feeling proud of myself for marshaling this evidence, and she'll say, no, that actually happened to your brother. That wasn't you, you know. So she definitely remembers more. Doesn't mean every woman remembers more, but that's good citizen science you can do if you're in a couple relationship. And what you're tracking is the way that not only how much larger the female hippocampus is, but the way it works. Because males, there's one area where males tends to be superior to females in memory. Anyone know what that is? So, spatial memory. Good. There's another one. And it actually fits with spatial because it always has to do with something where objects have moved through space. I just want you to dig down a little more. What do guys talk about a lot? Oh, go ahead.
Maybe how to do something.
Okay, how to do something. That's spatial. Absolutely.
Numbers.
Sport. Okay, we're getting closer with sports. All of these are correct. It's just I'm looking for something. Sports, and then we're getting closer. You said numbers. Quantification. Males do tend to quantify more. Yes, and it's actually fitting. Someone's going to get to it.
I was thinking like activity, like physical activity related to skill, kind
Yep.
of like the motor cortex.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, and I'll fill it in. And everyone is correct. And what it all leads to is, if you have a contest of sports memory trivia, right, who tends to win that? Guys tend to win that, right? And part of it is their interest. Since the very beginning, they've been interested in, like for me, it's tennis. very beginning, right? Been interested in tennis, so a lot of storage of trivia about tennis. And I remember the McEnroe-Lendl final, and I can talk about it. So all of this fits together. It's very often about doing something, cerebellum involvement, that connects to the hippocampus. It's probably visual. We probably access it visually or spatially, like hitting a tennis ball, right? Spatial. Sports related, very often. And then we store the trivia. So that's an example, and you can do that as citizen science. You can sort of look around. But what you'll find is that the female hippocampus is remembering more things. It's going to tend to be more things in different disciplines, and more emotive content. Okay? And that's just such a really important thing when you think about girls. And when you think about girls, switching over to girls for a moment, one of the big mistakes that we can make, and I've certainly made it as a father, a teacher, and even as a therapist, one of the big mistakes guys tend to make is we don't realize how much of the female brain, when it starts processing something that it has emotive content for, in other words, the hippocampus, it connects to, and by the way, what it will connect to is the anterior cingulate cortex, which is at the top of this. The arrow goes there. The anterior cingulate cortex is the focus attention part of the brain. Okay? So the female brain, so remember, we both do it. Everyone does the same stuff, but it's an emphasis in the brain. Males also connect memory centers to the focus attention part of the brain, but females are doing it more actively with more content on more diverse subject matter. So females are remembering 4 or 5 or 6 things at once and trying to accommodate all of these things and try to do these tentacles, and we call that multitasking, right? And I think it's pretty obvious to people that females tend to multitask more than males. However, one area that males are superior in multitasking, in fact the only area, is spatial multitasking. So you can test it by getting 10 boys and 10 girls to learn to juggle. Juggling is spatial multitasking. So males in general are superior at that. But every other kind of multitasking, females in general, these are generalizations, 1 in 5 exception rate, are going to say, one of the reasons they do it is once they link it to the anterior cingulate cortex, the focus attention part of the brain, they're really processing this stuff. They could be processing 3 or 4 things at once. And guys often make the mistake of cutting off the processing too quick. They cut off the processing. But if her brain has this loop, this is a rumination loop, right? Rumination is where you focus on something and you keep focusing on it, you just keep focusing on it. And it's not that that's such a great thing. Having raised 2 daughters, I mean, I can tell you that they don't like ruminating all the time, but that's something that happens. Their brains pick up more cues. So my daughters, as they were growing up, their brains would pick up cues that I would never pick up. Like someone rolls her eyes. I would never pick that up, right? It's a facial cue or a social cue. I would never pick up. So my daughters and I are at something. My daughter, maybe Gabrielle or Davida, would come up to me and say, "Did you see so-and-so roll her eyes at me?" Well, I didn't even see it, right? But let's pick Davida. She saw it, and she wants to process it. She's got a lot of emotion around this, right? So what's happened? She got the visual cortex got in there, right? And then the amygdala, which is right here, the amygdala, that green part. This is the sort of emotion, aggression, attention, or feeling center of the brain, even anger, and then it's sending signals, and it sends it up to the anterior cingulate cortex, and she's thinking and thinking, and she's getting more and more angry, right? It's looping. It's a rumination loop. She's thinking more about it, right? And at a certain point, relatively quickly, she's going to probably verbally process that, right? And if I just go, "What? She didn't roll her eyes at you. Forget that." Not very smart, right? Because actually what happens in that brain is that I'm basically not validating what she's feeling, and I'm not validating her processing of it. So then she has to go back into the amygdala, which is now getting angrier, right? This amygdala is getting angrier. And she's then got to try to stop herself from being so angry at me because I did not validate what she was feeling. And this is another difference. Now, do you have to validate what guys feel? Absolutely. So difference is not there. We should always be doing that with everyone. The difference is that females create longer rumination loops that last a longer period of time. And the reason they do that is in the midbrain, right in the middle here, and it's not on this drawing, but there's the insula, which is right in here. And the insula is the mirror neuron center of the brain. So what happens is she sees the person rolling her eyes. She sees her friend Anna who rolled her eyes. She pulls it in visually. It goes